Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in again through the Bible, verse by verse. And we're in the book of Nahum today. I'm Chuck Rhein with Calvary St. Joe, and just excited to see what God's going to do here in these minor prophets. So Nahum chapter 1 verse 1 reads, "The burden against Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum the Elkoshite." So when the prophets were getting ready to denounce judgments against a nation or a city, their message or prophecy was usually called the burden of that people or place. You can read that in Isaiah 13:1 as an example. What I just read is really all that we know about Nahum. His book came about 100 years after Nineveh repented, in what was perhaps the greatest revival in all of history. You recall Jonah, the one-sentence prophet, uttered that wonderful prophecy, and he would have given his right arm to have given Nahum's prophecy. It's interesting to know that Nahum is an abbreviated name for Nehemiah, and his name means comforter. So in context, the 10 tribes of the northern grouping of Israel was taken into the Assyrian captivity. So while they're in captivity, they're hearing about how God will judge the capital city of Assyria. And that would have brought them comfort, because at a time when they are in prison, they're being judged for their sin, they're hearing from the prophet of the Lord how God is going to take care of their enemies. They're the ones that have captured them. And so it's sad to report, but Nineveh became worse than ever after they repented and were spared from God's judgment. Nahum is also called an Elkoshite, which just rolls off the tongue. He's from Elkosh or Elkisi, which is a village of Galilee, according to Jerome. The name Capernaum actually means the village of Nahum, and it seems to take its name from this Nahum, who resided in it after being born in Elkosh. It was in the neighborhood. So Nahum's call was to address a city that had slipped back into sin and was ripe for judgment. And I know we can't relate to that in the United States, but we can. And so here the prophecy of Nahum shows us that God not only deals with individuals as individuals, but he also deals with nations as nations. So verse 2, it says that God is jealous and the Lord avenges. The Lord avenges and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserves wrath or anger for his enemies. When we read that God is a jealous God, we need to read that with understanding, because what it means actually is that for God to be jealous, it's love in action. Okay, he refuses to share his heart with any human rival, and he knows that our moral life depends upon our faithfulness to him. And he is not jealous of us, he is jealous for us, and that's a huge distinction. He's characterized in the first 8 verses as all-knowing and righteous and long-suffering, all-powerful and holy. And so when we read the Bible, when we study, we look at history, it's important because we're tempted to say in our 21st century perspective, well, I should be able to read this sentence and have complete understanding just upon the basic literal rendering of that, but you're not reading it with a mindset that this was written in BC and that this was written to a certain group of people in a context, because he's giving the captives hope. Now that applies to you and I. For those of us that have been captive in our sin, or even after coming to Christ, being captive in our sin post-Christ, knowing that he still has fresh vision, that he still speaks through prophets, and sometimes that prophecy is just speaking forth the word of God. So hope you check us out next time as we're in the next exciting minor prophet. Thanks for tuning in.